Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Athlete Podcast with me, James Roberts, transformational coach, two-time Paralympian, and TEDx speaker. I have another awesome episode for you today, so let's get straight into it. And on today's show, I've got Charlotte Hurst, hashtag the motion mentor, doctor of chiropractic for people and animals, author, blogger, movement coach, athlete, and type 1 diabetic. Charlotte is the founder of Hurst Health with a vision to provide the ultimate health center, incorporating the very best and most innovative treatments and therapies for patients. Hurst Health is currently focused on chiropractic, compression, cryotherapy in a beautiful location in the heart of Worcestershire, where the drive is towards helping people become intuitive about their bodies. Charlotte is a chiropractor with over 15 years experience in helping performance, healing, and function in her patients, developing the brand hashtag the motion mentor. Charlotte is leading the way, demonstrating that movement is fundamental to good health. Charlotte welcomes all patients into a clinic with particular focus on the athlete, helping to fine-tune their bodies to reach their very best performance and recovery from injury and setbacks in the quickest, most effective and safe way. This is done by integrating the health and coaching teams of the athlete so that there is a collective drive towards the same goal. So welcome onto the show, Charlotte.
Thank you very much, James. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be here.
That's my pleasure. Obviously, as we're talking, you're in the midst of your own training towards the London Marathon.
I am. It's getting very close. We're about 10 days out now. So the hard work is behind me. Thank goodness.
Obviously seen the London Marathon. Not the most exciting thing to watch on the television anyway. And then people will probably agree with me. The marathon is not the most exciting spectacle of sport. But from your experience as a chiropractor, how debilitating is it on the joints themselves?
So I mean, it is. If you do anything for any repetitive movement, the same thing over and over again, you're going to put stresses through the joints and soft tissues. I mean, that's a given. Add into that then kind of if you biomechanical issues or problems that we all have, as individuals have with our bodies, then that's going to add to the stresses that you put through the body. These days, though, the footwear is amazing and it's so technical, and that's made a huge difference to preventing injuries that the standard kind of running injuries, stress fractures, runner's knee, shin splints, all those sort of standards, in inverted commas, injuries. To be honest, I am really lucky. So historically, I've had kind of niggles. I'm obviously type 1 diabetic and I'm diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. So on medication, without my medication, I can't walk. The rheumatoid arthritis sits in my feet. I do occasionally get flare-ups. Since kind of sorting out my diet and nutrition, I work with a functional health specialist who's been amazing. My training, aside from just the managing the blood glucose levels, has been the tricky thing, but my training has gone very smoothly in the fact that I've stayed away from injury. So it's been a huge learning experience for me to put my own body through it, and sort of become more intuitive as to what, athletes are putting their body through in the run up to a marathon. So it's been really good. Things like terrain, the surfaces, terrain, up and down, gradients, like I said, footwear, all of that plays a massive part, and it's so important to get it right for you. And we're all totally different. On an individual basis really is the focus, and that's definitely how I've applied my training, and it's really worked.
It's interesting for you to say about the blood glucose, because obviously most people know more about type 2 than type 1. How much of a struggle has it been to balance that? Because type 1 day to day is pretty I won't say horrendous, but in terms of, I've worked with a client who's been type 1 and because of, and they were never actually able to find the cause of the hypos and the hypers. And then you add on the extreme of that, of a marathon on top of it, how difficult has it been?
Yeah, so it's been a real challenge. So yeah, day to day is a challenge because there are so many factors that can affect blood glucose levels. And I mean, that can be anything from, well, the obvious things of what you eat, plus what the weather's doing outside, stress levels, hormone levels, where you are in your monthly cycle, how much sleep you got the night before, what you did 2 days ago, what you've got, everything has an effect on the way insulin is used in your body. So that in itself, so that's the day-to-day challenge. And then, so it's an ever-moving target and it's an ever-moving goal. So every day is totally different. And every day is different, even if you're sat in an office and you work the same hours and eat the same stuff every day, it's still different. My days are never the same. And I've learned to kind of manage that. And I have an amazing team. And I've got it right with my, the way I'm administer the insulin and check my blood. And, the technology is incredible, which has been a godsend. So that has made training a lot easier. And it's a little bit a case of trial and error. And that's what it's been from the start. And so, I mean, I got into the marathon for April 2019. So I've almost been training on and off for 2 years for it. It's been a nightmare. But anyway, we're finally here. So I ran a Catch to 5K program for some patients in January. And that was me starting to get back running again properly. And I've continued it and I've just upped it very, very slowly over the last 8-9 months. And then that way I've been able to kind of adapt my diabetic management with it. The tricky thing is, excuse my French now, shit happens. And it has happened. And I've been sat in the middle of the road crying, unable to go any further. You think, oh, you'd be able to walk, if all you think somehow you get home, it just doesn't work like that. And I just got floored, at 10K, I was supposed to be running like 20K and at 10K, I couldn't go any further. And it was that's when it hit home that like, I just need to sit down and work this out. And that's what I did. I got some advice from my health team. I sat down and that's when I started measuring it out. So, I mean, obviously I was taking nutrition with me and gels and drinks and everything else. And that in itself is a challenge because for my long runs, I'm carrying about 4 kilograms extra on the back, which is just, and I'm very much a case like now, because that's happened at the 10K mark the other day, or 4 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, whenever it was. I don't want it to happen again. So you take spares and that's where it just gets heavy. So I sat down, the key for me, everybody's very different. The key for me was taking on about 20-25 grams of carbohydrates for the first hour and a half every half an hour. And then the more I run, the closer that gets. So I've worked this out. It's 4 jelly babies for each half an hour for the first hour and a half, and then 4 jelly babies for every 20 minutes after that. And jelly babies are great. So they're light as well. So that's what I'll be stuffing my pockets with for the 26 miles next Sunday. But yeah, that and then keeping fluids up and all the rest of it is really important. And then afterwards, when you get back, it's like the pull down, you're just because your glycogen levels are fairly depleted and all the rest of it. So it's managing it then the kind of 24 hours, 48 hours afterwards as well. And because I train hard anyway, I'm constantly kind of on the verge of depleting my glycogen levels. So I've just, like I said, it's been a huge learning experience and one that I've learned an incredible amount about myself. And like the last few weeks has gone really well. So fingers crossed now I can just keep it on the level for the next 10 days. The challenge will be I'm sleeping in a hotel the night before, might not get much sleep, you're apprehensive. That's where you get these unquestionables come in. And again, like I said earlier, that all affects blood glucose levels and the management of the diabetes.
I take my athlete career with a pinch of salt compared to that. And in terms, I put my number hat to type 1 diabetics in terms of there's enough, as you put it, shit for the regular Olympians, Paralympians, or people that high level athletes without adding an additional setback in terms of another health condition on top of it. So I didn't have to worry about what you're mentioning in terms of it's just hydration, refueling, and that. But I don't have to worry about to some extent about what I'm consuming, because ultimately it's going to be utilized by the body, because I was training very, very hard at that time. I have to, obviously, what we discussed about off air, I need to remind myself from time to time, you don't train six days a week anymore. You don't need to consume the amount of food that you sometimes do. That's easier said than done. Because it's what I mentioned with somebody I was discussing with today, the conflict with the identity. That's, I don't want to let go of James the athlete, because it is useful. Certain traits still serve me now, but it's trying to remember some of them don't. It's like, yeah, you can put those ones down, James. They're not useful anymore. Probably the consumption of food. I think I can blame the family a little bit. We like food, and I think more because of lockdowns and whatever you want to call them, fire breaks. What else? I can't think what else we call them in the UK, but we've become more sedentary in terms of that, and it's trying to push the boundaries. We have a rescue dog now, so it's trying to make him not walk more, but he's got that novelty of everything's new. So I want to sniff here, I want to go here. So he's probably quite happy to walk an extra kilometer or something like that, and it's trying to not overdo it from my perspective. Okay, James, you train far less now, but it's not going to hurt you to go a little bit extra, and just to see how you feel. As okay, yesterday I might have slightly overdone it, but it was okay. I don't feel too bad today. I was wrong last night, but obviously to what you're doing, I can't praise you enough. I was lucky enough to speak to another type 1 diabetic a couple of years ago who cycled across America. That's probably taking yours and magnifying a lot more. But in terms of the precautions that you need to make are more life-threatening. So for me to miss some of I hate those gels. I just don't like the taste of them. So I'd rather throw them in the bin. But if I was to not do it, I'm going to hit the wall, and that's about it. Whereas for you, it could be more catastrophic.
Yeah, absolutely. But essentially, it's all about just being organized and planning. And, once it's planned and you're organized, then there's much less room for error and mistake. It with being diabetic, it's the unplanned stuff that's when it, like say you suddenly have to go and run down the road, there's a load of sheep got out, or whatever, and they're blocking the road, and I don't know, someone's got to get through, for example. And that's when, that's the unplanned stuff. The planned stuff, it's doable. And this is what I'm trying to do. I want to prove to people that it's totally doable. If I can do it, I'm just your bog standard normal person. I class myself as an athlete. All my health team do, because because of the training I do and the sports that I do. But it's only at an amateur level, the same as what anyone else can do. So that's sort of, I'm trying to prove that someone normal, I don't know if you class me as normal necessarily, but for other reasons.
You're crazy doing a marathon. I think the closest I've come to anything with that word in it, my cousin asked me, would I do a half marathon? It's like, no. You can do the half marathon. I'm gonna stick to distances that are far less than that. And okay, I've probably done to go to the Paralympics and think that people probably call me crazy as well.
Absolutely. So I was going to say the training that you've been through and the regimes that you've been through, like that takes, hats off to you. Like that's,
Yeah, but you probably question it more because of what's happened with almost call it British cycling, British gymnastics, and it's definitely put the spanner into the works until, okay, I've been retired nearly 10 years. But when you speak to former athletes, it's like, well, where do you draw the line between results and bullying? Because I probably could, I wasn't bullied in GB rowing, but the head coach at the time asked my teammates, am I pushing James too far? I would probably say no. They said yes. But back to what you mentioned, Charlotte, of hats off, is I never really thought about it, the process. It didn't matter. I do reflect on it now a little bit differently, but I didn't care if I hated the training. I viewed it in the same way as if I liked it or it was indifferent. I have to do it if I want to represent my country on the highest stage. Some people might say that's lunacy, because why would you do something that you hate? I'm not in control of the training. So if I don't do it, they'll get somebody else to do it. And it's as simple as that. I think sport has got a little bit more cutthroat because what was it? Somebody I know within professional rugby was sacked via Zoom. I think that's extreme in terms of when pretty much you put your blood, sweat, and tears into towards your profession. I think it's probably the same in anything that you do. You're invested in you're driven into towards to be the best possible person you can be for yourself or the clientele that you work with. But I have to remind myself now, as like, well, if I hate what I'm doing, I need to question why, because that doesn't make sense. Because that's why you would outsource something in a business perspective. If I hate something that I do, few of my colleagues would be, they hate admin. I don't hate admin. It needs to be done. And if you work in a person business that you and I do, if we're dealing with people, why would you hate admin? You're dealing with a person. That's easy. You're talking to an individual all the time. I find that fun. It's not a chore. Okay, they happen to be a statistic on a spreadsheet, but they got a name, and then I'm going to speak to the individual, see where they're at, and where can I help them, where potentially where they're at. If I can't, see, wish them well. If I can, or I can suggest something, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a couple of years ago, I was questioned by somebody, not friends anymore, but they said I had more of an impact when I was an athlete. I laughed at that statement because it's like, that's not true. I have more of an impact now because it's a knock-on effect. And in sport, I didn't care. It was solely for coming back to the point that I was making earlier of, didn't matter if I liked it, loathed it, or loved it. It was for me. And I went from swimming and ended up in volleyball. The name on the front of my jersey was always important than me. And then once I went into volleyball, my family name is as important, and trying to put the town where I live now on the map. And make sure that anybody that's generally the media made a mistake of putting, James is from where I went to university in Swansea. No. The city don't need any recognition. Where my mother's family is from is a small place. It's most of the time it gets a bad rep if it's in the media because of Pontins. It's always bad press. It's like, well, let's put it in a positive perspective. It's been a couple of decades, but it's put in a positive perspective. And when I did come back from London, most people didn't know I'd gone, but that's because it's a small community, and I didn't make a big deal. I didn't make a big deal about it. It's like, well, I'm not likely to medal because of where we were. I'm going to enjoy the experience. And London, I probably enjoyed more than I did my first games, because there wasn't external pressure. I think there was more the pressure for the first one. And I'm happy I was not in the UK, being in a golden age. Paralympic sport, because we were in the shadows to some extent to the Olympic team up until a few months ago was pretty much you could guarantee a medal coming from the rowing team. So when the Paralympics kind of got involved, it's like, well, we need to make it, and following on from their successes is nice, because it's like, well, we want to put a statement on, and they've probably been the dominant nation since I went to the first one. So my family like to remind you didn't medal, but you've laid the foundations for that success to follow. And I think, and my actual boat coach actually did that on television. He spoke not personally to us, but I was watching. But I'm assuming most of the ones who are not in the program or would just sit up and say, like, well, it takes a lot for the past to be emphasized as much as the present. It's like, if it wasn't for you guys, this program wouldn't be where it is today. And that's me paraphrasing, but I have to remind myself that I need to enjoy what I do, because I'm going to burn myself out otherwise if I don't. And it's trying to do it in a subtle way of teaching people, not preaching to them. It's like, well, recovery is just as important as preparation and training. I'll probably do it a little bit better than I used to, but that's because of other people have been wiser than me. I'll go back to the days in my early days in the rowing team. More of an uncle to me than his performance director, but he asked me, do you want physio? And I said no. He's like, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. So, and that was me as a pretty much a novice in performance sport. It's not a question. Like, you're going to do what's, and I've probably taken it on from there as to try and find any ounce of information I can find to better other people as well. If it's learning about chiropractic treatments, I need to stop watching YouTube too much, because I've got one of the US ones in there. He likes to do all the cracking, and I start doing it, not on myself because that's quite dangerous, but in terms of, well, okay, this muscle, I think I might have tightness there because of the degree I did. It was very much to do with anatomy, so I know what I'm talking about as well. But it's like, yeah, I need to stop watching it, because it's like you're gonna find trigger points anywhere. But I'm not afraid to ask the question. I'll be honest to you and to the audience. I was, as a kid and growing all the way up through education, I'd be one of those individuals who very rarely, seldomly put a hand up. If I have had a question, wow, somebody else in this room will ask the question, and maybe a few times that would happen, but for the majority, I'd go with the question unanswered. And I think now that I've transitioned from sports into business, into coaching, I'm not fussed. But I want my question answered. If it helps other people, that's wonderful. If it doesn't, hey, I've got mine answered. If you guys are unwilling to answer questions, that's fine. I'm going to go push through. And there's a joke that my coach will take the mickey out of me from time to time. Sometimes I wait to the very end of the call to answer a question. So he'll joke, "Oh, you're not going to wait till," because normally in the middle of the afternoon, I'm going to wait till 2 o'clock, 2:30 to answer. No, I want to answer it. I want to ask it now. No, normally when I do it last minute is something sprung up through the course of the conversation of, oh, I didn't have the question now, but the others have got the embers burning. What about this? It's normally impactful for everybody else. Sometimes it's just for me. But coming back to you, so we don't go too much in the time and I don't bore people in the episode. Why did you want to specifically focus into chiropractic? Chiropractic.
Yeah, chiropractic. So there's quite a long and boring story behind all of this, but back at school, I between the jigs and the reels, I ended up deciding that I wanted to do physio, and I got my heart set on it. But before all that, I'd kind of started off doing politics and economics A levels, realized it wasn't, realized fairly quickly that wasn't really going to be for me. And then sort of didn't know, went through this kind of transition period where I didn't know what I was going to do. So I dropped politics and economics and took up chemistry half a year late alongside biology and PE. And I think I was doing maths AS level as well. So I missed half a year effectively of chemistry. My predictions for my A-level grades were just, well, for chemistry was like a U. And physio back then, and I'm sure it still is hugely competitive to get into. I think it was like 2 A's and a B you needed. And there was no way I was going to get a place at uni, even a conditional offer. So I applied to do sports science, and I got into Birmingham Uni doing sports science, and I thought, I'll swap, because I'll get the grades, I'll work really hard, and then I'll swap. So I did get the grades through a lot of work and private tuition with chemistry, and finally it all came together. And then I remember, so I'd started at Birmingham Uni, and I tried everything to get onto the physio course. I sat on the steps, refused to move, tried to cry. I hounded people, and they just wouldn't take me because they had oversubscribed anyway on the basis that a few people drop out and there was just no space. So as much as I love sport and I love science, that's my background, I didn't know what I wanted to do with it if I was going to do 3 years at uni. So actually a friend's mum said, you ought to look into chiropractic. And so I found a course that was, it's run by the University of Wales on a private campus, and they were taking applications. So they had 2 spaces left, and they were due to start in the January. And I got offered one of those places, and I literally jumped on this course and have not looked back. And it's just, people talk about things happening for a reason and all that. I mean, whatever it is you believe in, the stars aligned, whatever. I did the 4-year degree course in human chiropractic, and then went on straight away and did the postgraduate animal chiropractic, or veterinary chiropractic. It's actually, even though I'm not a vet, obviously. So back in 2005, I fully qualified from both. And then, immediately started working, and absolutely love it. Wholeheartedly believed in it from the start. Experienced it myself with a few minor things that I had in sort of my late teens a little bit. It's just been brilliant. And from the science perspective of things, I love numbers, I love science, I love I'm fascinated by the body. Our bodies are incredible. And it's just brilliant. I can apply all that to my patients in clinic, and it's just wonderful. So I do focus in clinic. I do focus on more of a kind of wellness and sort of overall health drive. We look at all aspects of sort of as much as people want to. Some people want to come in and they just want to get treated and get out the door and they feel great. Other people want to delve into different areas of their life, be it nutrition, social wellness, environmental wellness, intellectual wellness, all sorts. And it's really fun and really interesting. And like I said earlier, we're all so different. And that's what I really kind of, in my clinic setting, it's really focused on the individual. So I don't, I have no kind of strict protocols. I've got to see you once a week for 4 weeks. And then, you got to pay me up front for 6 sessions, whatever. There is nothing like that. I do like, if I get a new patient through the door, there's like a complete assessment. We have a chat about things, providing it's safe. I'll give a treatment. You have to do a few tests and make sure that it's all safe and the right situation to treat. And then I'd like to see them back sort of within, say, the following 2 to 3 weeks at some point, just to gauge the reactions to the treatment. Because again, everybody's very, very different. And then we can move forwards with, we'll have a conversation. What do you want to achieve? How did you feel after the first treatment? This might happen after the second one. Let's focus on this. Okay. Some people feel great when they leave, and they don't want to come back unless there's another problem. And that's, I respect that. That's fine. That's people's wishes. As long as they have the information, the choice is up to them. And I think people really like that. They like the fact that it's not, and also I spend time with them. So routine appointments with me last between 30 and 45 minutes. New patient appointments tend to last around 45 to 55 minutes. Patients are always texting me, they're calling me, if they need some information, they know that they can just get hold of me and I'll get back to them as soon as I can. So it's a real two-way dialogue, it's a conversation. I just want people to be the best versions of themselves, and that's really kind of the key. Jumping onto the athletes, and why I love working with the athletes so much is because they're just super in tune to their bodies, and it's an intuitive thing, or they tend to be. I think they could be more so, but in the fact that it's all about performance and getting that extra millisecond, or that bit of height, or that bit longer here, whatever their goals are on the pitch, on the track, on the field, and the swimming pool, in the velodrome, like whatever their goals are, we can aim to get a little bit more. And that's through function of the joints, which the nervous system, the firing of the nerves, and all the rest of it. And I think the only way, or not the only way, but the way of doing it the most effectively is by integrating the whole of the team surrounding the athletes. So whether that be I love working with physios, doesn't often work the other, they don't love working, with chiropractors necessarily. Or, there's exceptions to that, but I love working with massage therapists, strength and conditioning coaches, nutritionists, and then the athletes that then have to manage other health conditions as well, bringing in their team. It's all about integrated care, and everybody in the team driving towards one single aim and goal. Obviously setbacks happen and injuries happen, or recovery doesn't quite go as planned and things like that, and that's when you have to kind of be fluid in the approach a little bit as well. And that's why it's a conversation the whole time. There's this open dialogue, toing and froing, and I want as much information as I can get, then we can make good decisions and the right decisions, and get these athletes back either back on track, or striving for more, striving to be the best that they can be.
Well, I think I echo what you say, Charlotte, because it's the athlete is, well, if I generalize it, the person that works in the health industry is generally the worst patient, because they don't always do what they're supposed to do. But I think I've become more intuitive to ultimately the general populace, because that's you can help more people. I have worked with some people that have been athletes, but it's not difficult to push the buttons. It's like, well, you want what I had, what do you want to do? It's as simple as that. It's I obviously know what I'm doing in terms of what I said to you, what I did. I'll be open. Obviously, I didn't want to track things when I was an athlete, but that's because it was not digitalized, so it take probably a lot longer than it would do nowadays. But I could normally back it up and say why, but then I would still perform. But I think on reflection, it is one of the minor regrets of, if I would have done it back then, I would be more knowledgeable now, because I've done it the old-fashioned way of writing it down. If you'd have lost it, it'd be a nightmare. But in terms of, you could be able to look at it in an art form like the bodybuilders do, in terms of they're measuring things to the gram. I obviously wouldn't want. I don't think anybody that's wanting to lose weight would want to be that restrictive. Some people will. Some people have more discipline to be able to do that. I'm one of the ones that isn't. I probably could do it to follow a recipe, because ultimately, if you deviate from a recipe, it might turn out very badly. Sometimes it might turn out a bit better than the recipe, but you are walking into the unknown either way. Okay, I had a conversation earlier about that, of they were looking at it from a pessimistic perspective of, if I don't like something, I don't do it. I don't face failure. It's like, well, if you look at it from my perspective, you don't know what success looks like either. And that uncertainty that the media has portrayed, especially probably in the last 18 months, is counterintuitive to that, because ultimately, when I've sit down and taken a deep dive from a mental perspective, it's like, well, did I really have any bearing on the future in the first place in 2019? The answer to that is no. I do to some extent, because if I think in a certain way, I'm more likely to action what I'm thinking, rightly or wrongly. I did say to the person today, you have a choice. Probably as they progress, you probably could say there's more than two choices, but in the simple terms, you either persevere and you push through, or you quit. Okay, that's a sporting analogy is easy, because that's a choice, and that will generally, you can probably see who's a bit stronger willed in terms of who's willing to push through adversity, setbacks. I don't like the word adversity, because ultimately people say that with my life. It's like, it's not adverse. I'm born with my disability. Don't know any different. I'm humbled to know that there is adversity along the way, but having it from day one, what have I got to compare it to? So it's not adverse from that perspective. Yes, the years after that are difficult, but I think I had a good environment. You talked about team. I think I had a good grounding one from the very get-go from my family. It's okay, this is a setback from other people's perspectives. What do you want? What opportunities do you want to have? I generally was never told no with sports. It might be that you might not be suited for that. Why don't you try something else? Ultimately, that's I managed to turn that into a TEDx talk, and I did the opening line to family, and they kind of jaw drops. Like, yeah, okay, that's good. Then if you're shocked to that, what's it going to do to everybody else? But the point that I'm making is, I rose to that challenge. Okay, disability. Okay, so what? I started in mainstream sport. I enjoyed beating people that had all their limbs. It was generally fun to beat the people that had pushy parents, because it was hilarious. But I've always, to a point, rose to the naysayers. Okay, you don't think I can do it. You're the first person who could potentially be humiliated because of when I'm going to do it. I had a PE teacher that said I would amount to nothing. And I think the one I gained some respect from him is that I beat him in a swimming race. He let me pick the stroke. I picked the one that I was I put butterfly because it's a technical one. And then I was confident enough that I would beat him, but I humiliated him, and all of my classmates laughed. He didn't like that, but I gained a respect from that. And I think we're talking 20 years ago. Well, the teacher can't talk like that to a pupil anymore, but it drove me into all those dark moments and setbacks. I always reminded myself, well, James, this person said this of you, that of you. It's not very good emotional energy. I will attest to that, and to people, it's dark energy. Probably it's very prominent in sport because it's useful, because you can utilize it in a positive way. I try not to use it now because it makes me feel like crap. When I try and deliberately get angry for just to get a response, I'll look at things a different way. As, okay, if I was to put something out there and somebody did the opposite, okay, good for you. You were trying to get a reaction. I'm not going to give it to you. It's taken a learning to that, because normally I would, what did my mom say a couple of days ago? You like conflict. Yeah, I like watching it because it's like a car crash. It's like rubbernecking. where I need to probably catch myself is when I deliberately do it myself, is to deliberately sabotage. I know I'm doing something right. Oh, let's just hit the red button on purpose. And then I obviously feel very silly afterwards. It's like, well, why did you do that? But that is the element of the identity of, you don't think you're quite good enough. I can't persevere with what I'm doing. I don't think I'm capable of maintaining this level of competency. I never thought like that as an athlete. I know that there was elements of doubt, but it'd be quickly, yeah, okay, that's not helpful. I dismiss it. But I think because of being back in the mainstream of more of the individuals that I'm coming up with, think like that, of mediocrity. It took a podcast to make me think differently. Of the person said, why is it acceptable to accept mediocrity? That was a episode in a podcast. And I went, it just blew my mind. It's like, yeah, in that arena, it's unacceptable, mediocrity. It'd be chased out the door. Why is it okay in society? And it kind of got me to hit certain people's buttons. If they were an athletic background, it's very easy because I just use that story. What do you think to that? Is that acceptable to you in your eyes? Ultimately, the answer would be no. So why are you doing it in this environment? But it's so easily to do it because of the comfort. And you mentioned about patients leaving after one visit. That's comfortable. They've got back to where they feel. Whereas I think because of having the disability, and I put the two together, I'm alert and aware to, I'm facing an ever battle every single freaking day to stay in normal. I'm probably more in tune to, well, I need to go see a sports masseuse. I need to see a physio. It's finding probably the right chiropractor because I don't want people messing with my bones and they mess it up. But in terms of, it's a willingness to, if I can't find it, go and learn about it. So when I was talking about the YouTube, he's one of the best in what he does, but that's probably because he's on a social media platform. Thus, it makes it even bigger because people wouldn't keep going back to him if he wasn't very good, because it's, physio is one thing, your joints and your spine and whatnot is even more is putting you're probably putting life and limb into somebody else's hands.
Yeah, so it's really important, like, to be registered as a chiropractor in England. You had to have graduated from an accredited course. You have to have the proper insurance. The General Chiropractic Council is the governing body for chiropractic. They do a wonderful job in protecting the patients. We have to register with them. It's not cheap, and it's all very, very well governed. Perhaps where it gets slightly tricky is there's lots of different techniques of chiropractic out there. And as a lay person that doesn't understand all those different techniques, people have in their head, oh God, chiropractic is jumping on my body and cracking on my bones, and that's, often a myth. And it's certainly not kind of how I practice. Yes, it's joint manipulation, but it's so much more than that. And then you see on the social media, so like all the bone cracking and with the microphones by the joints and stuff like that. And it is addictive. I've caught myself out watching it, but that's not kind of real life. It's certainly not in my clinic. And yeah, so, and like going back, there's so many different techniques. It's very difficult. If you were going to look for a chiropractor, where would you start? Like, the best way is word of mouth. And, you've got a friend that's gone to a chiropractor, discovered, they can build up an amazing relationship with that person. And then it's word of mouth. And that tends to be how kind of my business drives. Proofs in the pudding. And now I'm offering kind of a bit more to it than just the chiropractic. Like, I've got people that come just for my cryotherapy and also the compression boots and things like that, which is really, really exciting because I'm welcoming people through the door that don't necessarily want a chiropractic adjustment or a treatment, and that's totally fine. It's totally fine, but at least then it can start a conversation about the other ways that I might be able to help them, or help manage, the problems that they're going through. Yeah, absolutely. It's difficult. And my advice would be go to the GCC website and find a chiropractor, but it doesn't really help the layperson in as far as, all the different techniques and everything out there. But what I would suggest is that you make sure your chiropractors are chiropractors and they're on the register. And that way, that they've come from an accredited school. That's really, and it's very well, I don't want to say policed, but it's very well regulated by the General Chiropractic Council. They're very good. And are across the board and on top of it. And then the other thing that we have to do are continual professional development hours every year. I've just literally submitted mine last night for the end of September. Has to do a certain amount of hours of ongoing training, and it's brilliant because it just keeps, you got to keep your mind in it all, because research changes, all the time. I love learning, which is why I'm so active on social media. I try and put educational content out on social media, quite, 3 posts a day, every day. Every week I'll cover a different topic. Some weeks it might be a little bit more serious than other weeks. Some people might find it boring, but, at the end of the day, I just wanted them to have the information to being well, or as well as possible, and, and leading a life that's going to be healthy and long. Really,
I think that's the difference between yours and mine. I think that the fitness industry in the UK needs to massively be overregulated, because in terms of, I try not to try to stay away from, but in terms of the stuff that you could probably find on Instagram or anywhere on the internet, in terms of being misleaded. Okay, I used an example earlier today of, if you were to put in how to lose weight, you'd probably find 1,000,001 different answers. And if you were to go through it from a layman's perspective, and somebody just off the street, probably that first page alone would kind of go in every different direction. But what's not helped is you get, I'll call them so-called celebrities, I won't call them celebrities, endorsing certain products, may never even take the product themselves, and people are easily influenced. I won't say manipulated, influenced, because that person is somebody that you potentially will respect. So I think you look at the likes of the US or Australia, where I think Australia's 2 years to be qualified into what I do, whereas my course was 6 weeks. And even my training provider did a couple of years ago, they compared university degree to the course, and I kind of went, well, okay, where are you going with this? Just from a financial perspective, I think, well, I've done the two. I'm a hell of a lot more knowledgeable than the degree. I was a bit annoyed I had to do my level 2 over again, but I coming back to my point with the sport, I just put my nose to the ground and got on with it. It's like, I'll tick your box, but I'm not pleased about it. And my level 3, when it came to PT, I just looked through the book. I was like, well, I know this from university. I'll revise what I don't know. And ultimately, I got the highest mark in the class. But what I don't like is, you think that's somebody that's done 6 weeks, may or may not have done HND or something like that, or higher, just because they like exercise, and they can actually treat the amount of trust that people have put, and I'll put my hand up, me included, because it probably took a amount of courage from that first person that worked with me, to help with them with their result. But I've learned so much more off that, and like yourself, okay, we don't have, we're not obliged to fulfill our knowledge and expand it, but that's something that I want to do anyway. So I'm lucky that I've got this as a resource. So I'm lucky to speak to yourself and people. Okay, it's on when it comes out, but it could be I've spoken to 2 people this week, and a different perspective on. I might come in with a certain perspective on the topic, and you blow my mind and kind of go, okay, you just. Well, I use the battleship analogy of you've sung my perspective on that particular viewpoint. That's no longer valid because you've come in with a different thing altogether, and I agree with it. It's like, okay, I've thought about it from this perspective. That doesn't suit anybody going forward. I need to start thinking from your perspective and how can I expand from that going forward. And it's through talking to people. I've probably not looked at a science paper for years, but that's more because it's I don't mind but looking at an abstract. I wouldn't read a paper, but that's because I don't necessarily. I know nutrition is probably changing on the daily, because something that is from a media perspective is probably going to be, if it's not fat, it's going to be sugar. If it's not that, it's going to be salt. Something's ever going to be vilified. And just to see what people think of what's the next bad thing, it's like, no, I'm going to have to, that's not the cause. One particular person I spoke to last week, it was like pulling teeth to get what they were just said to me, I'm restricting. It's like, what are you? It's like, what are you? Can you tell me what it is? Because that could be anything. It could be It ended up being carbohydrates, but it could have been sugar. It could be salt. It's like, well, what are you trying to do? How long have you been doing that? Because they did say to me that nothing was working. It's okay. Is it because you've not persevered with it? Would be one. Have you got sidetracked by something else or the next new thing? One individual I spoke to, they had a weird diet. It's like, yeah, if you were to make that to press, it probably would sell because it's something novel. It's something novel and it's new. I'm not saying it's going to make millions, but people are no gripes of this. People are sickle. It's, if it's the new latest, whatever, you make it sexy, I want it. I might probably read more into that. I might have some intrigue. If it's free, yeah, I'll have it, and I'll say, what have you, what new concept have you brought to the table, or are you regurgitating old stuff and then adding your little bit of sauce on the end? But that obviously comes with awareness, and obviously when you are in a state of probably growth, you're able to see through the weed. It's like, well, okay, this is bollocks. This is absolute rubbish. This is not serving anybody. Ultimately, YouTube is good and bad. Also, I think all social media, you could say there's pros and cons of it. I'll engage. I've actually engaged in it for a while, but I'll engage with it to some extent. Most of the stuff that I see is quite positive. It will be to, I think, through like you were discussing, Charlotte, before, of giving content that's going to inform people. You can only do that through a conversation with an individual, because how many times I did before when I started out of thinking what people wanted and it'd be so far from the mark, and thinking that I could do it alone. And I think, well, team now I've got is always, it helps be ex-military, so push the sport buttons easily. But in terms of, okay, what was I doing the other week? I went way off track in terms of trying to do something else. You said, James, that's not, no, you need to do this. From a financial point of view, is like, hey, you've told me once, and listen, told me twice. Now I won't do it a third time because that's just stupid. Because it's like, yeah, I know you're right. I wanted to try something. It did work, but he was right. But you do need those kind of figures to hold you accountable, feet to the fire, and kind of go, no, what you're doing, you could do it, but you're sacrificing something else in the meantime, and the progression of that. If you're willing to do that, that's fine. If you're not, obviously stop. But I'm lucky that I've had the connection to that, the sport. I think, what did my performance director say to me in the lockdown? Because I felt bad that I wasn't competing in Tokyo and I didn't go to Rio. He said, forget about that. You didn't go. That was a choice. But that's pretty much praise that I see it more as a family member. It's like, yeah, you're right. The book's not come out, but he did say, like, write memoirs and what people could learn from it. I did start it, and you can see a trend there of starting but not completing something. But the point that I'm making with that, Charlotte, is they normally know what's best. It's like, well, you chose to go in a different direction, own it and keep going. So I think watching Tokyo was the first time I actually felt all right. Rio was not easy. Knowing the athletes behind the scenes doesn't help, because you see behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. So that's still raw. It's still not, I don't think that'll ever go away, but I think I've come to embrace it. It's like, well, okay. They showed it on television. It's like, yeah, that's not inside the food hall. You're not showing McDonald's. If it's not in there, I'd be surprised, but it's there. So I was joking with family members, like, they didn't show you all of it. So that's the naughty athlete, because I know it's in there. But I think going forward, you're able to be empathetic with some of what they said. I was asked whether or not I'd be competing. I said, no, I don't have to deal with that heartache. And I'm quite happy I didn't have to deal with the mental anguish of will it, won't it? Pretty much like everybody else in a lockdown, out of a lockdown, but you're trying to compete and train at the highest level, but you don't have access to those facilities. Some did it better than others. And there was no excuse. I think the Olympians did, but that's a different story. But I think when it came to the Paralympics, there wasn't an excuse. If they didn't perform, there was no bitterness. And one actually did explain, well, they made a mistake. I wouldn't be so forgiving, but that's me. But that will probably spur you on going forward because of somebody else's it's not even an inadvertent mistake. It shouldn't be possible to this was with the triathlon and they got a time penalty, but they didn't time it properly.
I'd be furious. Yeah,
because it's like, well, if you didn't do it, time it right, that shouldn't be possible in this day, especially not at that level.
Not forgivable, is it? No.
So that's so whatever happened. But I think from a personal perspective, you've got to say, well, what's going on inside their world to do such an easy mistake. It's that you, okay. The other one would probably be the Olympic four steering out their lane, and the commentator said that's something you wouldn't see in an amateur regatta. That was funny. But the person admitted to he made a mistake. I wouldn't have done that publicly. I would have probably said it to the rest of the team. I fucked up, but not publicly because the media are going to have fun with that. But I guess you could appreciate, obviously, the officials are human.
I was going to say human error, right? Like, we all make mistakes, don't we? And it's just, those people that make those mistakes, my goodness, they'll be in turmoil about it, and giving themselves probably a harder time than what anyone else would be able to give them. And tough now.
Well, I think that's a human nature. Is your harshest critic. I hear it the occasional time of I'm hard on myself. It's like, well, you're human. It's technically it's still judgment. You wouldn't depending on where you are mentally, you'd probably accept it. But I think as you grow and evolve, you don't accept it from other people. But I have to remind myself in terms of the language that I use to myself. I wouldn't. Well, I've been brought up to not belittle other people. I might do it in a sporting setting because that's an alternative motive, but in a normal surroundings, I wouldn't do it because it's like, well, what am I getting out of it by making you feel bad in terms of I don't magically gain an extra foot or become 10 foot tall. I might in the moment, but in terms of I don't know what makes people do it, but in terms of that moment of growth, to be able to challenge that, I think I try and do it as early as possible in my coaching now. So, okay, do you really believe what you've just said? I did it today because I have a good habit of remembering what people say. It's probably from all the years of utilizing it to be able to, you've said this, thus I can utilize it. But I think I use it for good now because they said that from an exercise perspective, they were open to trying new things, but not when it came to their food. It's like, well, that's counterintuitive because doesn't make no sense. Because that's exactly you're telling me in one perspective of your life you can, and the other house you can't. So if we were to be more pragmatic with it, ultimately you can't because you're unwilling here, but you're willing here. Thus, do you really want to change overall? And I think I blew their mind. I try not to do that too much because it's like, I know I'm right, but it's trying to make you aware to, well, you've said this, but that statement doesn't agree with this one. And ultimately that's come out of your mouth, not mine. And it's the same. I think when it comes to when I've seen a physio, sports masseuse, I was quite naughty as an athlete. I'd go see the physio when I wasn't broken, but pretty close in terms of all the main muscles are supposed to do the bulk of the work. Those are tight. Then we have the minor ones. Now I need to be well, not fixed, but as in put back together again. And I think one physio ever said that, why do you always do it to the last minute? I was like, it's a good question. I don't know. But I think as you raise through the ladder, it's a lot easier. And that's what I realized when I retired. It's like, oh God, so easy to get fixed. It's just a phone call, and then it's okay. It's just a phone call. I think the worst injury I ever had, I tore a little bit of my rotator cuff.
Oh, okay.
That was. Okay. But I inadvertently, I kept training because I thought it was just DOMS.
Okay.
And then I tried to get off the floor and I couldn't move.
So how long did you think it was DOMS for?
I don't know when I did it, but obviously throughout the session, and when we stopped and then tried to actually move, I'm thinking, okay,
a bit more serious than DOMS.
I'm trying to move here, but why am I not going anywhere? And I was lucky though, because it was the moment of just, English is sport, ring them up. I've done this physio and within the space of a couple of hours. If that's now, brilliant. I don't know, maybe 6 weeks. No, not during COVID, but every normal times, that'd be 6 weeks, and I'd be out of action for a long time. And I have never felt so bored out of my mind, not being able to train for a week.
It's awful. It's horrible.
Well, they said rest. Like, okay, I like rest, but this is just sleeping the days away is a bit boring, a bit dull, and I actually recovered faster than I ever thought. I was meant to have potentially have an MRI and then have a cortisone injection.
Mm-hmm.
Have to have any of that, and it healed by itself. So it was
Brilliant.
probably a micro tip. It was pretty bad because it showed me on the ultrasound. I was like, okay, that's not good. And obviously it's never going to be 100% anyway. But I'm very alert to any tightness in the rotator cuff. Now it's like, well, if I haven't got full range, the buck stops with you, James. That's your fault. That's your fault. What are you gonna do about it? Because I'm now okay. I'm still competing at domestic level, but wheelchair basketball is heavily in with chess, so I haven't got. But it's a little bit out of range. But it's like, well, you know what to do. You know how to sort that. So I don't complain anymore, and the family never they're probably not nasty, but they're probably the most cynical ones. Like, well, that's self-inflicted. Don't moan about it. You're the cause of the pain. Don't moan about it. So I don't. So I'd had my COVID vaccine and the second shot, and they're like, oh, because I said what my symptoms were the night after. So why didn't you say wake us up? Like, no, because we're going to revert back to what I just said. He would criticize me if I was to do that as well. So I got on with it. It wasn't anything worse than the first one. I just felt that, well, I couldn't keep cool the first time and I couldn't keep warm the second. That was the only differentiation between the two. But I was like, I just grin bear, take some medication, and I should be back. I should be okay in 2 days, like I was the first time. And just think positively. It's not pleasant. Obviously, it's unknown. I don't like what they did the first time around. That they said, "Oh, we're looking into the data of my age group for the blood clots." I was nervous as it was. Before having it, it's like you could have just lied to me and told me that afterwards, and I've had it.
Didn't want to hear that. Yeah.
It's like, but then they said, "Do you still want it?" Well, it's good for the community, but if you hadn't told me that statistic, I'd have been okay. Because I've come here anyway, and then I think I've just got on with it, and it's been a definite conversation with some people, because some people, I think most of the globes had it by now, but when did I have it? About 3-4 months ago. People were asking, well, what was it like? It's like, well, I'm not going to tell you, because I'm one of those type of individuals, a bit of a hypochondriac. So if I read it, it happens. So I said,
make yourself believe it. Then
I said to him, I was like, well, I had symptoms of this. Who's to say you have none of those? You could be more severe, but I'm going to stop the conversation there, because ultimately I can read that you're getting anxious just by me, because I've had it. I was probably in the middle, which I was not happy, because some people went about their normal lives. It's like nothing happened. Like, well, I didn't get to have that. I'd have liked to have that, because that was easy. But I think it comes back to the adversity point that we were talking about earlier. Your situation is never as worse as anybody else. It's just a perspective, because when you are in that dark hole, everything's magnified in terms of, oh yeah, my problems are 100 times worse than it. But I think if you take it into perspective and kind of go, well, my life's not as bad as this. What have I really got to moan about? And I'm always striving, like you said, to be a better person myself. If I want to have more money, got to put in the work. If I want to have more clients, got to put in the work. If I want to be healthy, got to do the work. If it's sore, hey, That's why I do question people when they say no pain, no gain. It's like, well, that's not good, because ultimately, if you don't know the difference between, delayed onset muscle soreness and okay, I didn't, so that's not really a good example, but or something that's more serious to do with potentially a joint or something like that, there's something wrong, because it's like, well, there's no point pushing through pain for the sake of it. We're not one of these characters from Rocky or something like that's pretty much like a robot. It's, you need to have a ceiling that you kind of control. Okay, I've said to people that you're creating a ceiling when it comes to your health, because you're setting yourself up to fail. But in terms of, there needs to be a ceiling that you create, maybe with a lift or an elevator, in terms of, when to stop, and when it's like, well, recovery is just important as we echoed before, of the training. You need to recover after the fact, or you're just depleting yourself today 100%, tomorrow 90, 80, and it's a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that moves me nicely to my penultimate question to you, Charlotte, then. And I'm going to ask you two different questions. If you had to sit down with any athlete, dead or alive, who would that be and why?
Oh my gosh. So do I have to give just one? Can I have a dinner table? Can I have a dinner table?
Yeah, you asked the question, so you can have what you want.
I think this is probably quite a common answer, but I love to sit down with Muhammad Ali. When I like, he's a hero, all the rest of it. But when I was working in London at the Olympics, I was actually on a load zone for the opening ceremony, and I helped him out of his car, and it was the most magical. I just felt so lucky. And it was just an amazing experience. So I'd love to be able to sit down with him. Michael Johnson, I'd love to have. I think he talks a lot of sense. I'd love to hear about what he'd have to say on a whole range of topics, from athletes and life and all the rest of it. Serena Williams, I'd love to get to know her on a I'd love to get to know Serena, not the athletes and the kind of the outer shell, because I'm sure that there's a totally different person there than what we all imagine her to be. But my God, she's driven and a mum now as well, and how she balances all that out is incredible. And then I'm so there's two more. So Roger Federer, his grace on court and his mindset, and he's just so lovable. Everybody loves him from all sides of the globe, and he just has so much, like I say, poise and grace on court that it'd just be fascinating just to sit and listen to him, I think, whatever he's talking about. And then my final one. So Dad used to be a season ticket holder for Manchester United, and I'm one of three girls, so there's four daughters, and so we were kind of dragged along to the matches, and so we're all Manchester United supporters at heart, and I think it'd be brilliant to have Eric Cantona at the table as well. I think that would be quite fun. So yeah, there's my few. Are you glad you asked that now?
It's different. It's different. And then from a coaching perspective, who would you like to sit down with from that perspective?
Coaching in regards to a particular sport, or what are
you likely to gain more from sitting down with them, like from a knowledge perspective or intrigue?
God, I'd love just to have a select group. So for me, my approach to my work and what I help patients with is picking bits of knowledge from people. When I was competing, with horses and in triathlon, I had coaches, and different coaches for different reasons. And I think every coach, and this is why, these professional athletes that have coaches, or any athlete that has a coach, it's so particular to them who that coach is. Everyone's so individual, and we all need slightly different, types of input maybe or information. So I would love just to have a whole range of coaches, from different backgrounds, and be able to kind of listen to all of them really, and take bits of information from them, because I just think you can learn stuff from everybody and anybody if you're willing to listen, and especially in the sports world.
And my final question before we wrap up the episode, Charlotte, if you had to summarize what we have been speaking about into one sentence for people to take away, what would that be?
So I really think there's lots of different angles I can go with this, but I think really, for your audience and athletes, it's about being intuitive. And I mean, it's not just about being intuitive, it's about being super intuitive. If you want results and you want performance, and you can apply this to anything, amateur, professional athletes, daily tasks, anything. If you want performance and you want your body to be able to do stuff, then you've got to be in tune to it and be listening to it. And that's taking into account every aspect of your wellness and health, nutrition, sleep, recovery, exercise, work, stress, all of it, absolutely all of it.
So once again, Charlotte, thanks again for coming on the Mindset Athlete podcast.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, James, for having me. I've really, really enjoyed it.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks again for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this episode and got loads from it. Anything that was included and discussed will be available in the show notes below. And I would love to hear from you. Come and connect and ask your questions. I've been James Roberts from jamesowenroberts.com. Remember this quote by Hurst Health: an athlete is a mindset. It's how you prepare, think, and execute, not by some elite status or physical stature. Anybody can be an athlete.